Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Upside. I'm Vishal Chopra. Canada's tech industry in 2025 is characterized by robust growth and the digital transformation of traditional industries, supported by a strong educational pipeline from Canadian universities. But where does Canada fit in the global tech picture? And what trends, from AI, microchips, robotics, and more, should you have on your radar? Joining me today to unpack all of this and more is Portfolio Manager Joe Overdevest here in studio. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
And we're also happy to welcome, from a research trip in the San Francisco Bay Area, Vishal Chopra, Equity Research Associate. Welcome, Vishal.
Thanks for having me.
How's the sunshine?
It's nice. It's warm here.
That's good. Well, I'm really happy we were able to do this today. Vishal, you were able to squeeze us into your trip. Thank you so much. First question to you. We're going to get into some more specific topics in a little bit. But right now, just to kick us off, where does Canada fit globally in the tech story?
I think the hottest part of technology right now is AI. And as Canadians, we can really be proud that we were pretty instrumental in that story. I think as you look at history and you look at one of the largest tech companies in the world, NVIDIA, the CEO has always talked about this, I think, little model called AlexNet, and how that really kicked off the deep learning revolution and the machine learning revolution. Something that I think is a little known fact about AlexNet is that it was actually created by two U of T students and a U of T professor in Toronto. So we have a pretty substantial portion of the history, as well as I think the academic literature here in Toronto and research to support some of these AI advancements.
Neat. Now, Joe, anything to add on that?
I would just say I think Canada should be proud. Is that, when you look at we're maybe only 2% of global GDP, we carry our weight and more when it comes to technology today and in the past, in terms of microchips, of course, in terms of AI, in terms of software, hardware. So I think we should not feel too bad where we stand relatively.
All right. Okay, well, I wanted to get into some Canadian success stories. Why don't we turn it over to you again, Vishal, to kick us off on that. We've had Canadian companies leading in fields like e-commerce. We've also seen the digital transformation of traditional industries like oil and gas. Why is e-commerce been part of the Canadian success story, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think one of the most successful tech companies in Canada has been Shopify. And what they've shown is their ability to go from kind of this niche back end for small businesses into competing really against global giants like Salesforce today. And as they've done that and successfully competed up market, they've been more and more successful in terms of growing, gaining share, growing revenues. And today, if you look at the ex-China market, I think they're the second largest online retailer. So because of that company, it's been really instrumental to, I think, the Canadian technology success story, and then specifically our success story within e-commerce.
That's great. Now, Joe, what would you attribute Shopify's success to as they've grown to where they are today?
Yeah, Shopify will probably eloquently say it better, and there's probably multiple factors, but I really have to give credit, because he probably wouldn't say it, it's Toby, the CEO. Okay. And I think it's an example of when you have a great company, especially technology, the CEO or the founder can make a huge difference. And for our audience, of course, it's Apple, it's Amazon, NVIDIA. When you look at those strong leaders that started that culture and started that drive for success, you can see the same things that have happened to Shopify. And I can still remember meeting Toby on the original IPO meeting, and with his success story he's driven, we should be really proud of, but more importantly, him and his company should be really proud of, because it's a lot of his hard work.
Right. Actually, as a side note there, you mentioned founders. I know we have a fund here at Fidelity focusing on that. Really cool idea. I guess you could say that we've really seen that the founder bring something special to a company in the long term.
Yes, we've done data on this, that a strong founder can be a major difference in companies, especially with technology, because, again, I've met with Mark Zuckerberg before. When you actually meet with Mark Zuckerberg, you see where he sits in the offices. He sits in the middle. I've met with many CEOs over the years, and everyone has various degrees of how close they are to their product or their service. Mark is very close, and many of these CEOs, like a Toby or some of these technology leaders, like, of course, NVIDIA CEO I've met with as well. He knows very clearly what's going on and knows the details. And I think that's very important to understand. And the Founders Fund, yes, was actually the idea originally came from Will Danoff.
It really just shows, too, how one little nugget of an idea can grow into something bigger here.
Yes.
It's really cool. One specific topic I wanted to get into, both for you and for Vishal, again, joining us from his research trip out west, microchips, such a huge part of today's world. Vishal, maybe just simplify it for us. What is a microchip and why are they leaned on so heavily these days?
Yeah, you can think of a microchip as basically the brain that powers anything that's computer related. And the reason why it's so important is because people have found great ways to basically create software to either digitize processes, do things like e-commerce that were never possible before, basically make the world a little bit more efficient. And that software needs to run on some hardware that's able to process ones and zeros, and those are the chips that pretty heavily used today and will probably continue to be pretty heavily used in the future as well.
Cool. And Joe, as a follow-up to that, where are you seeing people making money off of chips in the investing space?
Yeah, I think early on it's the hardware, the actual chip spot, where we joke is the tightest supply of demand, the blue part of the flame.
Okay.
But usually we've seen this with many kind of like developments in technology. The hardware starts it, and then once they figure out the hardware, then comes the applications, the software applications. So for everyone's benefit here would be the iPhone came out and then a whole bunch of applications came out later. But you couldn't really envision them until the actual hardware came out with the iPhone itself. So what we're seeing is obviously a lot of potential investments or money is being focused on the hardware, but really we're seeing on the margin moving towards the software or the actual application of AI. And we're still very early innings, but that's usually where the probably next great investment opportunities will be.
Really cool. I wanted to turn to robotics next, which is a really interesting area with endless possibilities. What are you two seeing there? Joe, Vishal, who would like to go first?
I guess I would pass along to Vishal. He's in San Francisco. He's perfect for it.
Perfect.
Okay, yeah, I think there's, a while ago, there was this video about a surgeon with the assistance of a robot doing surgery on a grape. And I think what's interesting is that
grape, sorry, you said?
effectively how many different types of surgeries are done today. It's a lot more precise when a surgeon can do it with a robot, leads to better outcomes, less pain, faster recovery times for patients. What you're seeing is, I think, the use of effectively those chips and software as well as to create robots that result in better health outcomes and better patient outcomes for patients.
Cool. Anything to add there, Joe?
I think Vishal made a great point of where, robotics there's a huge opportunity for us as humans, and that one of the other ones is manufacturing, autos in particular.
Right, big industry here.
Big industry. They're very tough jobs, and for the men and women who do it, it's not easy, right? And I think that's where you've already seen it subtly. If you go to an auto plant, you can see manufacturing arms or really robotics of some sort, but really the next stage is full robotics. But I would say all this, because a lot of times people say robotics is in like, it'll just take over and you'll go to a plant or you'll go to a hospital surgery room and you only see robots. I think we have to understand we live in a very dynamic world. Just allowing robots to take over a whole plant or whole surgery floor is probably not at this point in time, right? And so, but I think it's a great way to allowing humans still to assist, to allow humans maybe to not be hurt or injured on the job, and allow maybe certain jobs to be done more by the machines. I think that's the future. And it's something that's benefiting, of course, Canadians, but also, of course, efficiency of our economy.
Right. I guess you could say that about a lot of tech in general. We're going to talk a bit more about AI shortly, but it's all about ways to assist humans, not necessarily taking over, right? Yeah,
I think a lot of what we get excited about with technology, we have to understand that, like, a simple rule we usually say is that in the short term, you will probably overestimate technology change. As in, you'll get very excited that we're all going to have robots, we're all going to have AI, and then, but you'll actually, longer term, you'll underestimate the potential. As in, like, the longer term, when we first got that iPhone or first got that personal computer, did you really think what you would do later with that personal computer or iPhone? You had no idea, right? And I think, so in the short term, we probably have to brace a little bit. We are still humans. We have to interact with these machines. And that is a big deal because governments aren't quickly to just allow certain things. And number two, society in general maybe is allowed to say, you know what, I'd rather have a computer or a robot do surgery on me. It's going to take some time.
Right. I'm thinking too about like generative AI, something big for what we do here, slowly taking over, but there's ways to use it to your advantage.
Yes, exactly.
Another thing I want to talk about with you two today, drones. You're seeing them everywhere, but there's practical uses for them, not just for taking pretty pictures of skylines or for flying into the middle of the Canada Day fireworks we're all going to see shortly. What are some practical uses of drones we're seeing in industries in Canada these days?
Yeah, again, one of them is for safety. I would say two examples. One would be mines. Underground mining can be dangerous, right, if not done properly. So a drone can come into certain areas that are maybe unsure of the structure itself, if it's safe. look for gases, look for any kind of like issues with the actual structure around it before humans go in.
The modern canary.
The modern canary in the coal mine, yes, exactly. And number two, similar to that, would be a railroad. Again, railroaders, the job is not an easy job. And so you could be, let's just say in Alberta, almost on a cliff-like location, and something's wrong with the train. Well, you have to stop it. You really feel like, how safe is it to go around and check what's going on outside? You could release a drone, check outside. Some particular heat sensing drones are very effective if there's a leak or crack somewhere. And these are examples where, again, making sure humans are more safe and the workers themselves, but more efficient overall.
Okay, interesting. Building off that mining example, just taking things over to oil and gas for a moment, it's legacy industry. I'm sure they have a lot of established operational practices, but also an area that's ripe for digital transformation. Where are you seeing some digital transformation happening in that industry?
Yeah, I think even take a step back, the old days oil and gas, there was a lot of valves and gauges, and you kind of like, you would see how much oil or gas is coming out. You almost kind of guesswork, like, okay, like, do we add more here for fracking? Do we not? And I think a lot of that has changed these days where, we'll meet with certain CEOs and they'll show us on their iPhone how the drilling is going back in Alberta or British Columbia, right? And they'll see in real time not only the exact output, but what did they put in the well, what is coming out, and they can, of course, call someone up and go, hey, we think we should make an adjustment.
So, and they're here, say, in Toronto.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And when you actually go on location now, you see a lot more of that, of digital, essentially outputs, as opposed to the old days of a gauge and such like that. But essentially oil and gas, mining in particular too, there's a lot of an industry that has a lot of data. And, when we take that data in potentially with, AI or some other resources like that, there is that benefit of getting more of the ground. Because again, a lot what's even happened the last few years was re-drilling wells we had actually left abandoned, but with new technology, they're finding more oil in Texas and the Permian in particular, and of course here in Canada, refracking older wells.
Interesting. And you're just the guy to comment on this, just for our viewers, if you didn't know, Joe, co-portfolio manager on the Global Natural Resources Fund.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you have anything more to say on materials, metals, uranium perhaps?
Look, I think technology in general, that we always talk about the second derivative. So everyone's talking about AI, for instance.
Right.
When we talk to the actual CEOs of many of these tech companies, they'll say, everyone's worried about this first problem you have, which is essentially chips or software. But they said you have to worry about the old world problems. The old world problems is power, is we actually need to turn the switch on. We take this for granted, but the grid has pretty much been flat for most of the last, almost 2 decades almost in North America. If this comes to fruition, with this much demand, you're going to need oil, you're going to need gas, you're going to need renewables, you're going to need uranium in particular, and all these things are going to be used in some way. And so it's really interesting that you have tech companies now thinking, okay, where is my energy source going to be? And I think we have to really watch in terms of countries that Canada looks to play a part in this, and looks to, as a country and as a government says, we want to be a solution to this, because if not, it will go to other places.
Right. On that note, the tariffs continue to be a big topic these days, trade. Anything new on sort of pipelines potentially going to the coast to send oil and LNG elsewhere?
Yeah. So we talked to CEOs, we talked to different people in the industry. I think people are excited that at least, our Prime Minister Carney is speaking words that are receptive to the oil and gas industry and in general resources. That's fast tracking, moving development. I would say this for the audience, though, we've been doing this for a while. You have to just caution. I'm sure Prime Minister Carney would say the same thing. There is a lot of politics when you cross borders, and so depending on what provinces you're covering, it could be easier than others. But right now, it seems like we have most of the major areas accepting this, which would be further development of pipelines potentially coming.
Okay, cool. Why don't we turn to the big topic of AI, and we'll turn things back over to Vishal again, joining us on. From California on a research trip. AI, huge topic. So Vishal, what are some applications in Canada where you're seeing for AI right now?
Yeah, I think some of the more interesting ones really right now is around coding. So the fun fact that I heard was that I think around 50 to 60% of paid tokens are effectively revenue for a lot of these AI companies today comes from people who are using it for coding use cases. And when you talk to companies in Canada right now, you're seeing, I think, significant for coding efficiency improvements. And they're able to release new products faster. They're able to do more with the same amount of developers. And I think they're also able to modernize maybe old legacy systems that are built off of old code bases to more modern code bases that are more performant. And I think that's a really interesting application that's taken off over the last few years and has really started to see, I think, significant adoption throughout the industry.
Great. Well, thanks for that, Vishal. Now, Joe, as a follow-up, what companies in Canada are you seeing making money off of AI?
Yeah, I think one of the ones is legal research. We're seeing that. Even for accountants, we're seeing that.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, Vishal said coding in general. Many companies that use any kind of coding are seeing the benefit of that. I think anywhere where you see a large amount of data, they're getting excited by that. And I think, when a lot of the companies we still talk to are still in the early stages. And one of the biggest things is the safety of the data too. Do you want to hand it over to a company? What does that company do with your data? But I think anything where there's a huge pool of data and it's more of a static environment, not a dynamic environment, I think it's really exciting for what they can do with it.
Interesting. Okay, well, we've been talking a lot about Canada. Why don't we turn things back to our friend Vishal, joining us from a research trip in the San Francisco Bay Area. Vishal, tell us a little bit more about this trip, and going into it, what were some questions on your mind that you wanted answered?
Yeah, I think the trip is an interesting part of the Fidelity research process, and it happens for various industries. This one is the technology research trip. So we have the opportunity to go visit companies at their headquarters, meet CEOs, CFOs, potentially even the product leads if they just released a new product that's very exciting, talk to them, ask them questions, get demos about a particular product. I think on the top of my mind, really, I think unsurprisingly, is around AI. How are companies using it? How are they monetizing it, though? I think to a greater extent, you've seen a lot of the chip companies make a lot of money off of AI, but that hasn't necessarily translated into significant software success yet, just minor software success at the margin. So looking for those companies that are, hey, we just released this new Copilot product or this new product that helps make our customers more efficient. There's significant uptake here. Here's a demo of this particular product. Look how cool it is. And eventually come to a conclusion about, hey, these are these new interesting applications of AI today.
I'm curious, Vishal, how many of you are on this trip and how many companies do you expect to see in your time there?
I think it's around 20 of us on this trip from across the world. So not only from Canada, but also from the UK and also from Asia. And then in terms of number of companies, I think it's around 20, maybe 25 in that range. So quite significant, and also quite a lot of the large companies today in technology that are making quite significant changes. So it's nice to be able to go meet them and for them to give us their time so that we can ask questions.
Well, that's awesome. Now, I know that you've done some of these trips before. Joe, you've gone on many. You've told us about them. I honestly think we could probably do a full 20, 30-minute show just on the research trips. Let us know in the comments if actually you think that'd be interesting, if you'd love to tune into that. We'd love to do a show just hearing more about the research trips. A little bit more on that, Joe. Like, what's one you might have coming up, or what's your favorite thing about when you go on these trips? Yeah,
it's a big part of what Fidelity does. I get very excited for it. So even today, we have 20 people here in San Francisco, which I've done the trip multiple times, and excited to hear what Vishal is saying when he gets back. He'll write a research note. He'll discuss with us, walk over to our desk. This research will be disseminated to everybody. But even today, we have people in the Chicago conference. Cool. We have people going to Calgary for a big energy conference in July. In September, CIBC will host a major conference across multiple sectors. So there's always opportunities to meet CEOs. Even today, I was walking over a major mining company, a global company was in and this morning and such. So what I like about it is that not only do we meet once, we meet multiple times. So I made mention of you
get to know these people.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, because sometimes you just meet a CEO and you're like, oh, I'm really excited, and I should buy this or I should sell this. Is what they use in the medical profession is the baseline. Right. Sometimes people come in, a patient says, I'm sore. Well, is that person who normally complains or not? And what you have to understand their baseline, what's it relative to? And so it's benefiting us at Philly. We meet with these CEOs multiple times. So you don't just get excited day one. You go, you know what? This is just a normal state of how this CEO communicates with us. Or he or she, this is a big difference in their mannerisms and what they're talking about in the future, as opposed to just saying, okay, we'll make one big decision on one meeting. And I think that's really important also to understand the ecosystem. So what I like about these San Francisco trips, we'll meet with multiple companies over multiple days. So you can say, who really is leading the AI race, right? And you can kind of hear.
Ask about each other.
You can ask about each other, right? And it's amazing too. You can just get little tidbits of they're complaining about certain players in the industry, doing better than them. And you're like, okay, maybe we should dig into that further. I think it's great. Goes back to Peter Lynch. We're always churning over rocks.
Yep.
It's very exciting. We're very, humbled to be part of Fidelity, to have this access. And we want to do what's best for our clients. And it's a great way to invest.
That's really cool. I wanted to ask Vishal as a follow-up to that. What would you say is the main trend or two you're seeing on this trip? Or is it AI, which you've been talking about already in coding?
No, I think what's really interesting is that while there is a lot of optimism around AI, over the last 2 years, what you've seen is basically AI be the forefront. Everything else sort of has sucked, or there's not been a lot of demand. But on this trip, the theme that's coming up is AI is still great, but you're seeing a little bit more optimism for some of the non-AI parts of their businesses, or some of the traditional parts of the businesses. For example, even selling to the auto sector, which is disrupted by tariffs, but potentially some opportunity for that to actually grow after a few years of that being a bit lackluster on the growth side.
Okay. Now, I know we're getting tight on time. Both of you have meetings to get to today. So just one or two questions to wrap things up, because I wanted to turn things back to Canada. And Vishal, I know that you, let's say I know, I have it down in my notes here. You went to Western, double major in computer science and business. So I'm curious to get both of your thoughts on really where is the hub or are there multiple hubs in Canada for research? Does it start with the universities? Is it concentrated in certain areas? Maybe Vishal, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think the hubs within Canada are around the major universities. Would call out specifically Toronto and then Vancouver. Toronto, obviously, with U of T, as well as Waterloo, that's very close by. Very good hub for both software engineering talent as well as just research talent, more on the academic side. And then Vancouver, as a close proximity to Seattle, which is a pretty major city for a few large US tech companies that also happen to have offices in Vancouver. So those are the two areas where you are seeing a lot of growth, and then you are seeing startups they're being created in those cities and those environments because of the talent that's there and the talent that's willing to work.
Great. Joe, anything to add there?
I think what Canada should do well in terms of going forward, continue what they're doing. What it means is the great rule of law, great tax system, hopefully to encourage capital. And you watch very closely how we adjusted almost capital gains. It's a small thing, but for the tech industry that does startups, that could have a major impact. So rule of law, a tax system that's friendly, strong universities we definitely have. These are the things that will attract our entrepreneurs to stay here and to invest in Canadian companies. But we have to be very watchful that we want to continue this going. And right now, we're in a pretty good spot.
Oh, terrific. That sounds like a great place to leave it off. Joe, thank you so much for joining me in studio here today. Vishal, thank you for joining us and taking some time out of your trip. And
thank you.
Thank you all for joining us on the show today. For more from us, please head to fidelity.ca's investor education section. Whether you're learning investment basics or looking for more advanced knowledge, we can help you become a more informed investor. You can check out articles, sign up for the Upside newsletter, get information about upcoming live webcasts, and on-demand videos. Fidelity Canada on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram is also a great resource for more content, as well as our Fidelity Connects podcast with new 30-minute episodes dropping daily. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join us again on The Upside. I'm Kyle Chopra.